easily the simplest truths are to forget. When writing the Alger Hiss perjury case to political prominence, Richard Nixon observed the cover-up is worse than the crime. 22 years later, during Watergate, the thought apparently never crossed his mind. Our fourth story on the countdown. In 1991, John McCain probably saved his career by abjectly admitting to his own stupidity and impropriety in the Keating 5 scandal. Now, running for president, he seems to be doing everything he can to turn whatever messy regional embarrassment comprises Troopergate into a cover-up of national proportions. Exhibit A. Edward O'Callaghan, as recently as September 3rd, a top terror prosecutor. Now Newsweek reports joining Team Palin to defend us from the truth. On September 2nd, filing to move the state legislature's investigation of Troopergate, whether she tried to get her trooper, ex-brother-in-law, fired, over to the State Personnel Board, all of whose members were appointed by Governor Palin. Now Exhibit B, O'Callaghan filing for that same board not to investigate after all because, quote, no probable cause was found by Palin's own lawyers. O'Callaghan, the appointee of a Bush appointee, not the only Bush veteran on Team Palin. Exhibit C, the AP reporting that former Bush Treasury spokesman Taylor Griffin now leads a dozen McCain lawyers and researchers, including RNC operatives, in Alaska. And Exhibit D, that Alaska state agencies now forward out-of-state media calls to the McCain campaign. Exhibit E, Alaska House Speaker Joe Harris, Republican, who approved the probe, now proposing to delay it until after the presidential election. Exhibit F, Palin's Attorney General now refusing to enforce the 13 Troopergate subpoenas issued by a 3-2 margin in the state Senate committee, a swing vote from a Republican from Wasilla. Exhibit G, 5 Alaska Republicans now suing to block the investigation and to prove the unanimous, mostly Republican committee's investigation is too partisan, getting free legal aid from a nonprofit law firm tied to James Dobson's right-wing Focus on the Family group. And Exhibit H, Sarah Palin herself, who first said she fired her top lawman, Walt Monaghan, not for refusing to can her ex-brother-in-law, but for not filling vacant positions. Then she claimed he quit. Now her people say the last straw was that Monaghan was insubordinate because he tried to get federal funds for fighting sexual assault cases in the #1 state for rape in the country, Sarah Palin's Alaska. Let's bring in a longtime scholar of Bush-Rovian politics, Huffington Post contributor James Moore, also, of course, co-author of Bush's Brain. Jim, thanks for your time tonight.
Hi, Keith.
Simply put, why are they doing all this?
Well, I think that this is probably the most illustrative example of how she would govern. I think once all the information is out there, we probably discover that she was petty and vengeful and she demanded loyalty in much the same way the Bush team does, and that will simply go to Washington. But what I would like to suggest is to the media and to Democrats that this is very much Sarah Palin's National Guard moment. If you'll recall, the National Guard information was very suppressed, and if the country had known about George W. Bush and his behavior on that particular issue before we all went to the polls in 2000, he might not have even won that close election, which he clearly didn't win. But this is an important moment, not just in Alaska's history, but I think in our country's.
Troopergate, though, on the face of it, there does seem to be something visceral that seems to support her position. I'm not saying legally or ethically, but there is a visceral feeling, oh, she was pushing back against somebody who did something terrible to her own sister. Right. Why not run with that tactic and instead go through this incredible fusillade of obfuscation and every possible Bush-Cheney-like tactic in the books? Why choose the latter rather than seemingly the easier path?
Because this is what they do now. They bring lawyers to everything. I find it interesting that the people who gave us tort reform and talk about lawyers screwing up our civil justice system and not giving us regular folks access to the civil justice system, they bring a airlift of lawyers into place to shut down things that they don't want to happen. They're the first people to pull the trigger on lawyers, and that's precisely what they're doing here again, is they're trying to use the legal tactics to suppress and scare people and destroy the messenger and the information before it gets out there.
But doesn't it also not work on a practical level? I mean, when it came out that she had this tanning bed, instead of just ignoring it, they said, oh, no, it wasn't about a tan. Maybe she has it to fight depression, which would be a much more complicated explanation than that she likes to get a tan now and again. Now Troopergate comes out, and instead of saying, well, she tried to get the trooper fired because he was a bad man or whatever, they're now saying they tried to get this man Monaghan fired because he was trying to raise more money for the state to fight rape. I thought the excuse had to be less damaging than the truth could be.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's the way it's supposed to work. But when you have no excuse other than a really stupid one, what do you say? I mean, this is a situation where they're looking around and trying to find any kind of explanation that might be palatable, that might not look stupid, and they come up with this, and it ends up making them look even sillier.
James Moore of Huffington Post, co-author of Bush's Brain. As always, Jim, great thanks for your insight tonight.
You bet.